But let's talk a little bit about the stories. How do these kids get to this point? And I use kids as kind of a broad term, but we do have cases of a 15-year-old in South Carolina or a 17-year-old in Denver, individuals that are drawn to this. And in many ways, it's kind of a mix between the old and the new. The old being the in-person recruitment that we see in Minneapolis, where the neighborhood kids knew the other neighborhood kids, and the first wave goes and the next wave calls back. But there's also that online dynamic I think we don't necessarily focus on enough in the right ways. So what they use in the online environment is kind of threefold. First is the grooming. So at the program we saw last summer, we watched a young woman who was a recent convert to the faith have questions about her faith, ask them on Twitter and say, brothers and sisters, I'm a recent convert, will you please help me? An ISIS recruiter realized she was naive and answered the questions in a very innocuous way over a course of a few weeks. Once he had built her trust, he then slowly introduced the jihadist narrative into the conversation, right? So they're using this as a grooming process. The second way they're using the online environment is logistical support. So think of a case like Muhammad Khan out of Chicago. Muhammad Khan's a 19-year-old kid, drives to the O'Hare airport with his 17-year-old and 16-year-old siblings, gets picked up by the FBI for trying to join the Islamic State. When they go through his pocket litter, and Ali's done this quite a lot, if you go through the pocket litter, they found 6 numbers of people to call when he gets to Turkey and how to cross the border. How's a kid from Illinois get this type of information? Through the contacts he made on Twitter, through a guy named Rafael Hostis, British guy who's in Raqqa who's kind of recruiting him. And the third way I think is the most important way now is this idea of the devil on the shoulder, right? Egging people on, what the FBI director says, the devil on the shoulder. Egging people on to do what they can where they are. And we've seen a number of cases in the US where there's a systematic approach, namely about a dozen guys in Raqqa, English language guys in Raqqa, they're directing or enabling individuals and saying, go attack this police station, this is the knife to use, this is how you upload it on Telegram. So we've seen that build up. Now that's the nature of the threat, but there's also the other part of this conversation is what do we do on prevention? And this is where kind of some of my expertise or my background plays into this. Prior to being at George Washington University, my main job at the National Counterterrorism Center was to do community engagement as it relates to these issues, right? So for about 3.5 years, I went to every mosque and community center around the country, usually after something bad happened. So after the Boston Marathon bombing, Imam in the mosque calls me and says, Seamus, 2 of my guys just did a horrible thing. Can you come talk to my congregation to try to prevent the next 2, right? And these are very awkward conversations, right? You're going in as a government official and you're saying, we're worried about terrorism, we're worried about these issues, and I need your help. Government, just by its very nature, doesn't get into this religious issue. There's First Amendment issues, there's Establishment Clause issues. It doesn't make us feel comfortable. But we had to have these conversations because a lot of these type of things has to be community driven. And think back to this time 2 years ago, I was in Denver. It was about 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground, meeting with about 300 people at a mosque there because 3 girls, a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, had jumped on a plane, gone to Frankfurt, and meant to go to Turkey. Their father had called every phone number in the Denver phone book until he got an FBI agent who was able to turn them around in Frankfurt. Right? When those girls get back here, the community says, "Man, 3 of our girls just did this. I don't know what's going on here." Right? So those type of conversations are very important because you want to start a conversation about prevention and intervention. Because by the time they jump on the plane, it's a little bit too late. I think back to interviewing a lot of these family members of individuals who join terrorist organizations, who die over there, who are spending 20 years in jail. And at some point they say, I watched this train wreck happen in slow motion, and I didn't know what to do. And so the process the US government's trying to get to, the process the community is trying to get to, is what is the role of bystanders in this scenario?